The bustling spaceport of Nexus Prime was a cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights from 100 different worlds. Amidst the chaos of loading docks and refueling stations, a lone figure stood out, not for her appearance, but for her intense focus on a battered old freighter that had seen better days. The Viridian merchant clicked his mandibles together, a gesture Zara had come to recognize as deep thought among his species. She could almost see the gears turning in his alien mind, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. After a long moment, Krell spoke. "You realize, of course, that if this goes wrong, we could both end up in a Centaurian prison colony. Or worse, blacklisted from every reputable spaceport in the galaxy." Zara's grin widened. "That's the spirit. But trust me, it won't come to that. I've done this sort of thing before. Well, maybe not exactly this, but close enough. What have you got to lose?" Krell's upper arms crossed while his lower ones gestured in exasperation. "Only my ship, my livelihood, and possibly my freedom. But you're right about one thing, Earthling. I don't have much left to lose." He extended one of his lower arms. "Very well. I, Krell of the Viridian Merchant Guild, accept your offer, Zara Reeves of Earth. May the stars have mercy on us both." Zara clasped his hand, her small human fingers engulfed by his larger alien ones. "Trust me, Krell. When I'm done with your ship, you won't be asking for mercy. You'll be outrunning it." Zara Reeves, a human engineer with a reputation for thinking outside the box, surveyed the ship with a mixture of pity and excitement. Her unruly mop of red hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her coveralls were stained with grease and coolant from a dozen different species engines. She approached the ship, her toolkit slung over her shoulder, a gleam of curiosity in her green eyes. As she neared, a gangly alien emerged from the ship's cargo hold. Krell, a Viridian merchant, stood nearly 7 feet tall, his iridescent scales shimmering in the artificial light of the spaceport. His 4 arms were busy with datapads and inventory lists, and his large, compound eyes blinked rapidly as he noticed the approaching human. "Greetings, Earthling," Krell chittered, his translator struggling to keep up with his native tongue's rapid clicks and whistles. "If you're looking for passage, I'm afraid this vessel isn't cleared for passengers. Freight only, you understand." Zara grinned, shaking her head. "Not looking for a ride, friend. I'm here to offer my services. Name's Zara Reeves, and I couldn't help but notice your ship could use a little attention." Krell's antennae twitched, a sign of both interest and wariness. "Attention, you say? And what would a human know about Viridian tech?" "More than you might think," Zara replied, patting her toolkit. "I've worked on everything from Arcturian star skimmers to Zygon cargo haulers. Your T-7800 Freightmaster is practically vintage, but I bet I could make her purr like a kitten." The alien merchant's compound eyes narrowed, focusing on Zara with newfound interest. "A bold claim. But even if you could, my friend, credits are tight. The shipping business isn't what it used to be, not with the big corporations squeezing out independent operators like myself." Zara nodded sympathetically. She'd heard this story before, from a dozen different species across the galaxy. The little guys were always getting pushed out. "Tell you what," she said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I've got some experimental tech I've been itching to try out. Human ingenuity mixed with a bit of, shall we say, unconventional thinking. You let me work my magic on your ship, and we'll split the profits on your next big haul. What do you say?" Krell's antennae went rigid, a sign of shock among his people. "Experimental? Human tech? That's not exactly legal in most sectors, you realize." Zara waved a hand dismissively. "Only because the big corps haven't figured out how to monopolize it yet. Look, I'm not talking about weapons or anything dangerous. Just some tweaks to your propulsion, navigational systems, maybe a little something to boost your cargo capacity. Nothing that'll show up on a standard scan, but everything that'll give you an edge over the competition." Over the next few days, Zara set to work on Krell's ship with a fervor that both impressed and terrified the Viridian merchant. She worked long hours, often foregoing sleep, her hands a blur of motion, as she rerouted systems, installed mysterious devices, and muttered to herself in a mix of English and half a dozen alien languages she picked up in her travels. Krell, for his part, alternated between hovering nervously over her shoulder and pacing the length of his ship, all four hands clasped behind his back. "Are you certain that goes there?" he would ask. Or, "I don't recall that system having quite so many blinking lights before." Zara would only grin in response, her face smudged with grease and her eyes alight with the fire of creation. "Trust the process, my friend," she'd say. "Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a faster-than-light drive." "Faster than Zara. That's highly illegal." Krell would sputter, his scales changing color in agitation. "Only if we get caught," she'd reply with a wink, before diving back into her work. As the days wore on, the ship began to transform. On the outside, it still looked like the same battered old freighter, but inside, it was becoming something else entirely. Zara had replaced the standard fusion reactor with a compact antimatter drive of her own design. The navigation systems now incorporated quantum entanglement principles, allowing for near-instantaneous course corrections. And the cargo hold? Well, Krell was fairly certain it was now bigger on the inside than the outside, though Zara assured him it was just an optical illusion caused by a bit of dimensional folding. Finally, after a week of non-stop work, Zara emerged from the engine room, her face streaked with sweat and grime, but wearing a triumphant smile. "She's ready," she announced, slapping Krell on one of his upper arms. "Time for a test flight, Captain." Krell chittered nervously. "Are you certain? Perhaps we should run some simulations first, or had a licensed inspector take a look." Zara was already heading for the cockpit. "No time for that, my friend. We've got a schedule to keep, remember. You've got that big shipping contract to fulfill, and we need to prove this baby can outperform any corporate hauler in the quadrant." As they strapped themselves into the pilot and co-pilot seats, Krell couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and dread. "I still can't believe I let you talk me into this," he muttered. Zara's fingers danced over the control panel, bringing the ship to life. The deck hummed beneath them, a deep, powerful thrum that Krell had never felt before. "Believe it, buddy. Now, let's see what this girl can do." With a whoop of joy from Zara and a startled screech from Krell, the ship shot out of the spaceport like a bullet from a gun. They rocketed past the orbital stations, streaked by the system's outer planets, and punched through the heliopause in a matter of minutes. Krell's many-faceted eyes were wide with disbelief. "By the first egg," he whispered. "What have you done to my ship?" Zara leaned back in her seat, a satisfied smirk on her face. "I've made it the fastest, most efficient freighter in the galaxy. That's what. Now, how about we go make some real money?" As the stars streaked by outside, Krell realized that his life would never be the same. He had partnered with a human, allowed her to modify his ship with technology that skirted the edges of legality, and was now hurtling through space at speeds he hadn't thought possible. But as he looked at Zara, her face alight with the joy of discovery and the thrill of adventure, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Perhaps, with this strange human by his side and this incredible ship beneath him, he could carve out a place for himself in the vast, uncaring universe. "Very well, Zara Reeves of Earth," Krell said, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a Viridian smile. "Show me what this ship can really do." And with that, they rocketed off into the unknown, leaving a trail of stardust and broken records in their wake. The unlikely partnership of Zara and Krell was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same. The once quiet hangar bay of Outpost Zeta 9 buzzed with activity and whispered rumors. At the center of it all stood Krell's freighter, now barely recognizable as the worn-out vessel it had once been. Zara Reeves, her red hair now streaked with silver from prolonged exposure to exotic particles, darted around the ship like a caffeinated hummingbird, making last-minute adjustments and muttering to herself. Krell, meanwhile, found himself surrounded by a growing crowd of curious onlookers. His iridescent scales shimmered with a mix of pride and anxiety as he fielded questions from fellow merchants and opportunistic buyers. "Is it true?" a squat Valaxian trader asked, his gelatinous form quivering with excitement. "Did you really outrun a Cornaxian warship last week?" Krell's antennae twitched nervously. "Well, I wouldn't say outrun, exactly. We simply arrived at our destination before they could catch up." A chorus of impressed murmurs rippled through the crowd. Krell was about to elaborate when a shout from Zara cut through the chatter. "Hey, Krell, get your scaly behind over here. We've got a problem." The Viridian merchant excused himself and scurried over to where Zara was elbow-deep in an open panel, surrounded by a tangle of wires and pulsing crystals that definitely weren't standard issue. "What seems to be the issue?" Krell asked, his compound eyes darting nervously between Zara and the growing crowd of spectators. Zara wiped her brow, leaving a streak of luminescent fluid across her forehead. "The quantum flux capacitor is out of alignment. Again. I thought I'd fixed that last time, but it looks like the spatial warping is putting more strain on the system than I anticipated." Krell chittered in distress. "Is it dangerous? Should we evacuate the hangar?" "Nah, nothing like that," Zara said, waving the hand dismissively. "Worst case scenario, we fold space-time a little. Might cause some temporary nausea for anyone within a few parsecs." "A few parsecs." Krell's voice rose an octave. "Zara, that's an entire sector." The human engineer shrugged. "Hey, you wanted the fastest ship in the galaxy. This is what it takes." She reached into the panel and yanked out a glowing crystal. "Hand me that hyperspanner, would you?" As Krell fumbled for the tool, a new voice cut through the hangar, deep, resonant, and unmistakably authoritative. "What in the name of the Galactic Concordat is going on here?" The crowd parted, revealing a towering figure clad in the unmistakable uniform of the Intergalactic Commerce Commission. Admiral Xanthor, his cephalopod features arranged in an expression of stern disapproval, strode towards the ship. Zara popped her head out from behind the panel, her face breaking into a wide grin. "Admiral, long time no see. How's the wife and spawn?" Xanthor's tentacles writhed in agitation. "Cut the pleasantries, Reeves. I've been hearing reports of an unregistered vessel making impossible freight runs across restricted sectors. I should have known you'd be involved." Krell stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Admiral, I can explain. You see, we were simply trying to optimize our—" "Save it," Xanthor interrupted. "I've seen enough. This ship is in clear violation of at least a dozen interstellar commerce regulations. I'm shutting this operation down." Zara's eyes widened. "Now hold on just a minute. You overgrown calamari. We haven't broken any laws. Bent them a little, maybe, but—" The Admiral's tentacles lashed out, wrapping around Zora's wrist. "You're coming with me, Reeves. And as for this ship, it's to be impounded immediately." Chaos erupted in the hangar. Krell let out a high-pitched wail of distress, while the assembled crowd began shouting and jostling for position. In the commotion, no one noticed the small, pulsing crystal that had fallen from Zara's hand, rolling across the deck and coming to rest against the ship's landing gear. "You can't do this," Zara shouted, struggling against Xanthor's grip. "Do you have any idea what this technology could mean for the galaxy? We're talking about revolutionizing interstellar trade." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "And appending carefully balanced power structures in the process. Did you think the major corporations would simply stand by and let a couple of freelancers run roughshod over their profit margins?" As Xanthor began to drag Zora away, Krell felt something snap inside him. Years of playing it safe, of bowing to authority and barely scraping by, crystallized into a moment of defiance. "No," the Viridian merchant said, his voice surprisingly steady. "I will not allow this." Before anyone could react, Krell scooped up the fallen crystal and leaped towards the ship's airlock. His long, spindly arms punched in the access code, and the door hissed open. "Krell, what are you doing?" Zara yelled, still struggling in Xanthor's grasp. "Something very foolish, I expect," Krell replied. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he tossed the crystal to Zara. "Catch!" Instinct took over. Zara's free hand shot out, snatching the crystal from the air. The moment her fingers closed around it, a blinding flash of light filled the hangar. When it faded, both Zara and the crystal were gone, leaving a very confused and empty tentacled Admiral Xanthor. Taking advantage of the confusion, Krell ducked into the ship and sealed the airlock behind him. His hands flew over the control panel, initiating the startup sequence Zora had drilled into him just in case. Outside, Xanthor was bellowing orders, calling for security and tractor beams. But it was too late. With a roar that shook the entire outpost, Krell's ship burst out of the hangar, scattering onlookers and leaving a trail of superheated plasma in its wake. As the ship rocketed away from Outpost Zeta 9, Krell allowed himself a moment of panic. What had he done? He was now a fugitive, fleeing from Intergalactic Commerce Commission authorities in a ship he barely understood, without Zara to guide him. But then, as if summoned by his thoughts, a familiar voice crackled over the ship's comm system. "Nice moves, partner. Didn't think you had it in you." Krell's antennae perked up in surprise. "Zara? Where are you? How?" "No time to explain." Zara's voice cut in. "That crystal you tossed me. It's part of the ship's emergency teleportation system. I'm in the engine room now, but I can't materialize fully without destabilizing our warp field. You're going to have to fly this bird while I talk you through some emergency repairs." The Viridian merchant's compound eyes blinked rapidly as he processed this information. "Fly? But I don't know how to." Alarms blared throughout the ship as multiple pursuit vehicles appeared on the radar. "Well, you're about to learn real quick," Zara's disembodied voice said. "Welcome to the fast lane, buddy. Now punch in the following coordinates." As Krell's fingers danced across the control panel, inputting the sequence Zara rattled off, he felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. This was madness, pure and simple. But as the stars began to blur around them, and the ship leaped into hyperspace, leaving their pursuers far behind, Krell realized something. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Krell found himself pushed to the limits of his mental and physical capabilities as he juggled flying the ship, following Zara's rapid-fire instructions, and attempting to make sense of the cacophony of alarms and readouts that constantly demanded his attention. Reroute power from the auxiliary thrusters to the quantum stabilizers. Zara's voice would crackle over the intercom, followed by a series of incomprehensible technical instructions that Krell somehow managed to follow. "Now bank hard to starboard and activate the dimensional shifters. We're going to slip between realities to lose these ICC goons." Krell's hands moved almost of their own accord, his body operating on pure adrenaline and instinct. The ship shuddered and groaned around him as it performed maneuvers that defied the laws of physics as he understood them. Through it all, Zara's voice remained a constant presence, alternating between terse commands and bursts of exhilarated laughter. "You're doing great, Krell. We're rewriting the book on interstellar travel here. Just a few more adjustments, and we'll be home free." Finally, after what felt like an eternity of narrowly avoided collisions, reality-bending jumps, and more than a few moments where Krell was certain they were about to be atomized, Zara's voice came through once more, this time tinged with relief. "All right, partner. I think we've lost them. You can power down to standard cruising speed. Let's find somewhere to lay low and make some proper repairs." As the ship's frenetic pace slowed and the alarms gradually fell silent, Krell slumped in the pilot's seat, his exoskeleton quivering from exhaustion and residual adrenaline. "Zara," he chittered weakly, "what have we done?" There was a moment of silence. Then a shimmer of light filled the cockpit. Zara's form coalesced beside him, looking somewhat translucent and tinged with an otherworldly glow. She placed a spectral hand on Krell's shoulder, a proud grin on her face. "What we've done, my friend, is make history. We've just proven that my modifications work beyond our wildest dreams. We've outrun the ICC, outsmarted the biggest corporations in the galaxy, and pushed the boundaries of what's possible in space travel." Krell's antennae drooped. "We've also become wanted criminals, endangered countless lives with untested technology, and likely destroyed any chance of ever working legitimately again." Zara's grin only widened. "Exactly. Isn't it exciting?" Despite himself, Krell felt his mandibles twitch in what passed for a Viridian smile. "You humans have a very strange definition of excitement." "Oh, come on," Zara said, her spectral form gesticulating wildly. "Think of the possibilities. With this ship, we could revolutionize space travel. We could help people, deliver aid to cut-off colonies, explore uncharted sectors of the galaxy. Or," Krell countered, "we could be disintegrated by our own technology, captured and imprisoned by the authorities, or torn apart by corporate assassins." Zara waved a translucent hand dismissively. "Details, details. Look, I know this isn't what you signed up for. If you want, we can find a quiet spot to drop you off. I can handle things from here." Krell was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes taking in the unfamiliar star patterns outside the viewscreen. He thought about his life before meeting Zora. The constant struggle to make ends meet, the monotony of playing by rules designed to keep independent operators like him from ever getting ahead. Then he looked at the control panel in front of him, bristling with new technology and pulsing with potential. He thought about the exhilaration of their escape, the thrill of pushing a ship to its limits and beyond. Finally, he turned to Zora, his antennae quivering with a mix of fear and determination. "And let you have all the fun? I think not. Besides, someone needs to keep you from accidentally destroying the fabric of space-time." Zara's face lit up, her spectral form seeming to glow brighter. "That's the spirit. Partners in crime." "Partners in crime," Krell agreed, then quickly added, "though perhaps we could focus more on the partner's part and less on the crime going forward." Zara laughed, the sound echoing strangely in her semi-corporeal state. "We'll see, buddy. We'll see. Now let's find a nice, out-of-the-way planet to set down on. I've got a few more upgrades in mind, and something tells me we're going to need all the edge we can get for what comes next." As Krell plotted a course for a remote system on the edge of known space, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. He had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in his life, he was eager to find out. The controversial upgrade had changed everything, and there was no going back now. The adventure of Zara and Krell was just beginning, and the galaxy would never be the same.